In Lagos, where power walks in polished shoes and secrets ride in the back seat, trust is often the currency most easily spent and the hardest to earn back. This is not just a story about a driver. It's a story about a woman who was loved but left lonely, a man who gave everything but failed to see what he was losing, and another man caught between duty and desire. Sometimes betrayal isn't loud. It walks quietly beside you until it opens the door you thought was locked. This is the story of a trusted driver and a beautiful and lonely housewife of a ruthless billionaire. Kenneth had been Chief Robert's driver for over 7 years, long enough to watch the man's empire grow from modest wealth to billionaire status. Every morning, Kenneth reported early, polished the sleek black Mercedes until it gleamed, then waited patiently for the chief to descend from his mansion. There was a quiet dignity about Kenneth. Mid-30s, calm-eyed, firm-featured, he wasn't just a driver anymore. He was almost like family, but even family, he knew, had boundaries. Chief Robert trusted Kenneth. He had come to depend on him not just for transportation, but for discretion, punctuality, and the sort of solid presence that didn't ask questions or carry gossip. Kenneth was the only one allowed to drive the chief's wife anywhere, the only one who had the full codes to every private estate and property the chief owned. When traveling abroad, Kenneth often handled the movement of luggage and even had access to diplomatic runs. That kind of trust, Kenneth knew, didn't come easily. The front doors opened with a creak, followed by the echo of deliberate footsteps. Chief Robert emerged dressed in his usual tailored navy blue suit, sunglasses already in place, and a phone pressed to his ear. Make sure the Dubai figures are accurate before close of business. No excuses this time, Jude. He ended the call, glanced at Kenneth, and offered a sharp nod. Morning. Good morning, sir, Kenneth replied as he held the rear door open. Chief Robert slid into the back seat, adjusting his cufflinks. Kenneth circled to the driver's side, entered, and pulled smoothly out of the compound. The silence inside the car was familiar, comfortable even. Kenneth had come to know that Chief Robert wasn't one for idle chatter. About 15 minutes into the drive, Kenneth cleared his throat gently. Sir, forgive me asking, he said, his tone respectful. Madam seemed a little withdrawn yesterday. Chief Robert didn't look up from his tablet. She's fine, just being Naomi. There was a pause, but Kenneth didn't fill it. She was going on about wanting to start a homeware business or something again, Chief Robert added, with a dismissive wave of his hand. Told her now's not the time. She'll get over it. Kenneth kept his eyes on the road. Understood, sir. She'll feel better after her spa and boutique run. Take her after you drop me. That boutique in Lekki she likes, the chief added. Yes, sir, Kenneth responded. Chief Robert glanced up briefly. You think I'm being too hard on her? Kenneth hesitated. The question caught him off guard. I wouldn't presume, sir. But sometimes, maybe Madam just wants to feel heard. Chief Robert huffed a small laugh. What do you know about women, Kenneth? Wait till you get one of yours, then you'll understand. She's heard. She just doesn't realize it. Kenneth offered a tight smile and returned to silence. It wasn't his place, or so he kept reminding himself. Through the tinted windows, Victoria Island rolled past. Clean sidewalks, modern buildings, morning joggers. Kenneth's gaze lingered on a woman crossing the road with a boy clutching her hand tightly. There was a softness in the way she held him. His thoughts drifted again. Naomi used to be full of warmth. She used to greet him with a smile, ask how his day was going. Lately, her voice had grown thin, her eyes always distracted. He couldn't pinpoint when it began. Maybe it had been a gradual fade, like a song that once filled a room and now played only in memory. Chief Robert spoke again, bringing Kenneth back. After you drop her off, don't hang around. Just call when she's ready. All right, sir. Another pause. Then Chief Robert added, more softly this time. She's been restless, but she'll settle. They always do. Kenneth didn't respond. He just drove. But deep within him, a quiet unease had taken root. Not from what had been said, but from everything that hadn't. Naomi stood at the large window of her bedroom, arms folded loosely over her silk robe, as she watched the soft morning light filter through sheer curtains. Below, the compound was waking up, gardeners trimming, security men pacing, and the sound of Kenneth's car leaving with her husband. The mansion was quiet again as usual. She let out a small sigh and turned from the window. A long mirror stood across the room, and in it, she caught a glimpse of herself. Still beautiful, still elegant. Yet even she could see the tiredness beneath her eyes. The kind that came not from lack of sleep, but from something deeper, something that pressed in on the soul. Her fingers touched her collarbone, then dropped to the silk belt knotted loosely around her waist. She sat on the edge of the bed, absent-mindedly rubbing one foot over the other. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. She picked it up. It was from Kenneth. "Good morning, Ma. Chief said I should take you to the spa and then the boutique. I'll be at the front in 10 minutes. She typed a brief reply. "Okay, Kenneth. Thank you." She didn't know why she added the thank you. Maybe because Kenneth was always polite. Maybe because she needed to hear her own gratitude for once. She stood and walked toward her closet. Inside, rows of dresses, shoes, and designer handbags lined the walls. Everything in place, everything expensive. Yet the silence in the space was heavy, more expensive. She chose a soft beige dress and gold sandals, laying them gently on the bed. Her fingers lingered over the fabric. There was a time she would have been excited to wear something like this. Now it was routine, empty. In front of her large mirror, she brushed out her gold-colored buzz-cut hair slowly, watching herself without expression. Her brush paused halfway through a stroke as a thought passed, but she pushed it aside. No time for thoughts, not today. The housekeeper knocked lightly and entered. "Madam, should I bring your tea to the car this morning?" Naomi turned. "No, thank you, Tina. I'll have something after the spa session." The girl nodded and left. Naomi stood for a moment longer, then stepped into her dress. The silence resumed. When she finally walked out the front door, Kenneth was already there, standing beside the car, door open, his usual quiet efficiency on full display. "Good morning, Ma," he said. "Morning, Kenneth," she replied softly. As she slid into the back seat, Kenneth closed the door behind her, then circled to the front. The engine purred to life. They drove in silence at first. Naomi leaned her head against the window and watched the world pass by. Vendors setting up for the day, school children in uniforms with backpacks too large for their frames, a couple on a morning jog, laughing about something. "Chief said I should take you to the spa first, Ma. Then the boutique in Lekki," Kenneth said without turning. She nodded, almost to herself. "That's fine." Another stretch of silence passed. The car's movement was smooth, almost lulling. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the rhythm of the motion hold her. When she opened them again, her voice broke the silence, quiet and unsure. "Kenneth, do you think I'm unreasonable?" He glanced at her through the rearview mirror but didn't answer right away. "No, Ma, I don't think that at all." She gave a faint smile. "I try, to talk, to reach him, but sometimes I wonder if I'm even visible anymore." Kenneth focused on the road. His grip on the wheel was firm but relaxed. "I see you, Ma," he said quietly. Naomi turned her head, surprised. There was no flattery in his voice, just honesty. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel invisible. She said nothing more, just leaned back into her seat, watching the road ahead as the city opened up around them. The car pulled up slowly in front of a sleek, glass-fronted boutique tucked into the heart of Lekki Phase 1. The name, Avel, was etched in brushed gold across the minimalist black facade. Inside, mannequins posed in tasteful displays, draped in flowing gowns and smart two-piece sets. Kenneth stepped out, rounded the car, and opened the door for Naomi. She stepped out gracefully, sunglasses on now, one hand adjusting her hair against the breeze. She didn't say much, she hadn't all morning, but gave Kenneth a small nod before heading into the boutique. He watched her disappear inside, then moved the car a little further down to park. From the driver's seat, he kept the boutique entrance within view but didn't stare. Then his phone buzzed, a short message from the chief. She behaving better at the boutique? I want to believe so. Kenneth looked at the screen for a moment, then locked the phone without replying. It wasn't his place to judge or answer that. Inside the boutique, Naomi was met with eager smiles from the attendants. One of them, a young woman named Remy, stepped forward immediately. Welcome back, Madam Naomi. So good to see you again. Your usual section is ready. Naomi gave her a polite smile. Thank you, Remy. I'll just browse a bit first. The boutique smelled of lavender and wood polish. The air was cool, quiet, filled only with soft music and the rustle of silk as she passed her fingers lightly over a rack of new arrivals. She wasn't shopping for anything in particular. She rarely was these days. Sometimes it was just about motion, doing something, being somewhere. She held up a navy dress, admired the craftsmanship, then placed it back down. Remy hovered at a respectful distance. Madam, we just received a new Italian line this morning. Would you like me to show you? Naomi hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Something simple, nothing dramatic. Remy led her to the far side of the boutique, pulling out two pieces, both elegant, both understated. As Naomi examined the clothes, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from a number she didn't recognize immediately. Then she remembered. It was the manager of a children's charity she had once volunteered with briefly, before marriage had drawn her into a different life. Madam Naomi, good morning. We're hosting our quarterly outreach in Makoko next weekend. We'd be honored if you could join us. She stared at the message for a long moment, then put the phone down on the counter without replying. Would you like to try it on, Ma? Remy asked, gently lifting the fabric. Naomi blinked and smiled softly. Yes, why not? She disappeared into the changing room. A moment later, Kenneth, still parked out front, adjusted his side mirror and glanced at the time. No rush at all. He'd wait until she's done. That was his job. And for now, the world spun quietly forward. The ride back home was mostly quiet. Naomi sat with a shopping bag beside her, though the contents inside were few. Her eyes remained fixed on the window, watching buildings blur past. Kenneth drove smoothly, neither too fast nor too slow, allowing the afternoon to unfold at its own pace. At a red light, Kenneth glanced at the rearview mirror. Would you like me to stop and get anything for you on the way, Ma? Maybe refreshments? Naomi looked up briefly. No, thank you, Kenneth. He gave a small nod and returned his gaze to the road. They passed by a row of street hawkers selling fruits, snacks, water in sachets. A little girl knocked on a car window behind them, balancing a basket of bananas on her head. Naomi watched the interaction in the side mirror. I used to come out with friends, she said suddenly, her voice reflective. Before marriage, we'd eat roasted beef by the roadside, laugh about silly things, watch people walk past. Kenneth said nothing at first, then offered calmly. You still can, Ma. She smiled faintly. Not really, not anymore. A long pause followed. The noise of Lagos filtered through the closed windows, the honk of impatient drivers, the crackle of a radio from a nearby car. Naomi leaned back and added, when everything becomes routine, even silence stops meaning peace. Kenneth glanced at the mirror again but stayed quiet. She turned her gaze toward him, studying his profile, the stillness in his posture, the calm with which he handled the wheel. You don't talk much, do you? He smiled faintly. Only when I feel it's needed, Ma. That's rare in men, she said quietly, almost to herself. Everyone wants to talk over you these days. I've always believed in listening first, Kenneth said softly. Naomi leaned her head back again. Not surprised at all then. It already shows. The gates to the mansion loomed ahead. As they pulled in, the guards opened them quickly, stepping back with respectful nods. Kenneth parked in the usual spot near the side entrance. He stepped out, Open the back door. Naomi stepped out gracefully, holding her bag lightly. She stood for a moment, taking in the stillness of the compound, the trimmed hedges, the distant sound of a gardener's shears. Everything was in order, yet something within her felt misplaced. Before walking away, she paused. "Thank you for the drive, Kenneth." He bowed his head slightly. "You're welcome, Ma." Naomi walked up the steps and disappeared through the door. Kenneth watched the door close behind her, then returned to the car and sat in silence for a moment longer than usual. Not because he was waiting, but because something about that ride lingered. Chief Robert sat in his private lounge, a glass of whiskey in one hand and his tablet in the other. The room was sleek, modern, lined with framed certificates, rare art pieces, and a wide floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked a trimmed lawn. Evening sunlight filtered in, casting soft gold across the white marble floor. The television on the wall was on, though muted. Business news flickered in the background. His attention was fixed on the report in front of him, a proposal from his logistics team in Port Harcourt. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Kenneth. "Madam is back. Dropped her off safely." Chief Robert stared at the message for a second, then tapped a short reply. "That is good. Thank you." He set the phone aside. His gaze drifted toward the bar shelf where a second glass sat untouched. The door opened lightly. Naomi entered. "I didn't know you were back already," she said, walking in slowly. She had changed into a house dress. She looked fresh but a little distant. "I've been back for about 20 minutes, he replied. "Had a few things to finish." She sat on the couch opposite him, crossing her legs neatly. "Boutique was quiet today. I didn't get much." He nodded but didn't look up. Naomi waited, then asked, "Did you eat anything?" "Had something at the office," he said, still scanning his screen. Another pause. Then she said softly, "I got a message today. From the charity I worked with before. They have a program next weekend. They asked if I could attend." He finally looked up, mildly curious. "The one in Makoko?" "Yes, that one." Chief Robert leaned back. "If it helps you stay active, why not? You've always been passionate about those things." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "You think it's a good idea?" "I said you could go, didn't I?" She nodded slowly, glancing down at her lap. He took a sip of whiskey and set the glass down. "Naomi," he said suddenly, "if you want something, go ahead and do it. You don't need my permission." Her lips parted slightly, surprised by the tone. "I wasn't asking for permission." "All right then," he replied with a small smirk, turning back to his tablet. Naomi rose from her seat, brushing her dress down with slow fingers. "I'll leave you to your work." He gave a small nod. She walked to the door and paused briefly before exiting. Then she left without another word. Chief Robert watched her reflection in the window after she disappeared. Then, slowly, he picked up the untouched second glass, poured himself another finger of whiskey, and downed it in one silent motion. Kenneth's one-bedroom apartment sat on the second floor of a modest building tucked behind a quiet street in Surreyr. The day had faded by the time he turned the key and stepped inside. He slipped off his shoes by the door, loosened the top button of his shirt, and walked to the small kitchen. The apartment was clean, carefully arranged, just the way he liked it, the life of a single man. A kettle sat on the stove. He filled it with water and placed it on low heat. On a table by the window sat a stack of newspapers, a pocket-sized Bible, and a black leather notebook where Kenneth occasionally jotted down thoughts he never spoke. A small wall fan hummed in the corner. Outside, the murmur of Lagos traffic drifted faintly through the window screen. He poured himself a cup of tea when the kettle whistled, then settled by the window with the cup in hand. He sat there a while, sipping slowly, gazing out. Children's voices echoed from a nearby building, someone shouting about a football game. A woman called from a veranda upstairs to her younger sibling below. Kenneth didn't look up, he just listened. His phone buzzed. "Chief Robert. Pick me by 8 a.m. sharp. Bring the silver car. Naomi may want to use the other one later." Kenneth replied simply, "Well noted, sir." He set the phone down and leaned back, letting out a long, quiet breath. For a man who spent his days behind the wheel, these few moments of stillness mattered more than most would understand. No orders, no watching mirrors, no veiled instructions wrapped in formal tones. Just tea, a fan, and the slow, uncomplicated tick of the wall clock. He looked over at the black notebook on the table. His hand hovered over it for a second, then pulled back. Not tonight. Instead, he took another sip of tea, leaned his head back, and let the quiet wrap around him like an old coat. The morning began like any other. Kenneth waited patiently at the edge of the front porch, dressed in his clean uniform, silver sedan washed and ready. Birds chirped somewhere beyond the manicured hedges. The house stood still in that usual elegant silence, as if nothing inside ever broke down or out. The door opened. Naomi stepped out, adjusting a slim gold bangle on her wrist. She wore a simple cream-colored gown and soft flats. Her expression was unreadable at first, but her voice carried a gentle rhythm. "Good morning, Kenneth." "Good morning, Ma." He opened the car door for her. As they eased into traffic, Naomi sat back with her hands on her lap. A few minutes passed in silence before she spoke. "I dreamt of my mother last night." Kenneth glanced briefly through the mirror, surprised by the sudden admission. "Hope it was a good dream, Ma?" Naomi smiled faintly. She was singing. She always did when she cooked. "I don't think I've heard anyone sing that freely in years." Kenneth offered a soft hum of understanding. "Maybe some memories visit to keep us grounded." "Maybe," she replied, leaning into the headrest. They reached the charity center in Yaba, one Naomi hadn't visited in a long time. Children were gathered under tents. A few volunteers greeted her warmly. Kenneth stayed by the car, arms folded quietly, watching the interaction from afar. Later, as they drove back, Naomi looked out the window, watching Lagos blur past. "Do you ever feel like you're just existing, Kenneth?" His hands stayed steady on the wheel. "Sometimes, Ma. But I try to remind myself that presence has its value." Naomi nodded slowly. "Presence," she echoed. They arrived home around noon. Kenneth parked as usual by the side entrance. As Naomi stepped out, she paused slightly. "Thank you for today." Kenneth gave a small nod. "Always, Ma." She walked inside. Kenneth stood beside the car a moment longer, then turned to retrieve a small file from the back seat. Chief Robert's business documents. As he stepped toward the house to hand them in, the main door opened. Chief Robert stood there, already dressed for his own outing. He glanced at Kenneth, then at the file. "You're back early," he said. "Yes, sir. Charity run finished sooner than expected." Robert took the file, flipping briefly through it. Then his eyes settled on Kenneth. "She seemed all right today?" Kenneth nodded. "She was fine, sir." There was a short silence. Robert gave a dry smile. "You've always been steady. That's why I trust you." Kenneth bowed slightly. "Thank you, sir." Chief Robert walked off toward his car. Kenneth watched him go, that line, "That's why I trust you," ringing louder than usual in the back of his mind. The house was quiet again. Naomi stood at the center of her walk-in closet, holding a folded shawl in her hands but not quite aware of it. The stillness around her was thick, not peaceful but stalled, like a clock that had run out of charge. She placed the shawl down and walked into the adjoining room, a small sitting area she had designed herself, once with color and books and throw pillows that made her feel human. Now it felt like a gallery, untouched, admired, but rarely used. She sat down, picked up her phone, and scrolled aimlessly. Scrolled through Facebook, Instagram, news, an old photo from a friend's child's birthday last year. Then she opened her messaging app. Her finger hovered over a contact, one from years ago. An old colleague from university days who had once tried to convince her to return to publishing. She began typing, "Hey Tolu, it's Naomi. Just thinking of you. Hope life's been kind. I've been meaning to ask about that." She paused, read it again, then slowly erased it. Next, Her thumb hovered over Kenneth's name. She didn't type anything, just looked at it. A soft knock pulled her out of her trance. Kate, the housekeeper, entered. "Ma, should I bring your lunch here?" Naomi blinked back into the moment. "No, thank you, I'll eat later." Kate nodded and left. The door clicked gently behind her. Naomi looked down at her phone again, then locked it. She stood, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled down a worn hardcover, 1,000 Splendid Suns. She didn't open it, she just held it for a while. Then, quietly, she placed it back and returned to the silence. It was supposed to be another ordinary drive. Naomi had just finished a meeting with a women's community group on the mainland. Kenneth stood by the car as usual, waiting with quiet attention. The late afternoon sun casted long shadows as the compound gates opened. She walked toward the car, her steps slower than usual. "Good afternoon, Ma?" Kenneth greeted, holding the door open. Naomi paused, then looked at him. "Kenneth, do you have anywhere to be?" He shook his head gently. "No, Ma. I'm here for you." She hesitated a little. "I don't want to go home just yet. Let's drive. Somewhere quiet." He blinked once. "All right, Ma." The ride was silent for the first 10 minutes. Kenneth didn't ask questions. He took the Lekiepe route and turned toward the waterfront, an area still under development, sparsely populated, dotted with unfinished buildings and palm groves swaying in the wind. Approaching the random destination, he parked in front of an abandoned viewing deck overlooking the lagoon. The breeze from the water carried a soft, salty coolness. Gulls cried faintly in the distance. Naomi didn't get out. She just sat still, her gaze on the horizon. "You ever feel like Lagos is loud even when it's quiet?" she asked softly. Kenneth smiled faintly. "Yes, Ma. Some parts more than others." Naomi turned toward him. "You know, when I married Chief Robert, I thought I had found stillness. He was strong, composed, and what you call unshakable." Kenneth remained silent, respectful. "But it's funny. Stillness can become something else, can become emptiness, maybe, or noise you can't hear." A breeze swept through the open windows. Naomi's scarf fluttered slightly. Kenneth kept his eyes on the road ahead, not daring to intrude. "I feel invisible most days," she continued, "even to myself, and I wonder if I'm allowed to say that aloud without sounding ungrateful." Kenneth looked at her then. His eyes were calm but searching. "It's not ungrateful, Ma. It's honest." She exhaled, then offered a tired smile. "You always say the right thing without saying too much." "I try to listen more than I speak, Ma." She nodded slowly. "That's rare." A moment passed. Naomi opened her bag and pulled out a water bottle. She took a sip, then offered it toward Kenneth. He hesitated, then took it gently, drank, and handed it back. Their hands brushed, and Naomi didn't pull away immediately. Her fingers lingered, just for a breath. Kenneth held his posture firm, but something subtle had shifted in his eyes. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said. "It's the first time in weeks I've felt like I could breathe. I'm glad I was of assistance, Ma." They sat in silence again, this time softer. A kind of calm wrapped around them, not romantic, but undeniably close. Eventually, Naomi said, "Let's go." Kenneth started the car without a word. As they drove back through the thinning afternoon, something had shifted between them. A simple driver and the wife of a billionaire. It wasn't spoken, but it was there. Naomi's request came 2 days later. She called Kenneth directly. That was a rare thing. Her voice was soft, slow, like she had been rehearsing the words. "I need to get away from the house for some hours today," she said. "Somewhere quiet, somewhere no one knows me." Kenneth hesitated. All right, Ma. Should I come to the house?" "No," she said. "I'll meet you. I'll send you the address." Kenneth wondered for a while. It has always been him who goes to meet Naomi somewhere, perhaps a place she had went. Now it tugged on his mind why his boss's wife is making such an unusual request. However, There is only as far a question as Kenneth could ask. His job role is to be there when he is needed, and that is exactly what he was going to do. 30 minutes later, Kenneth pulled up to a discreet boutique hotel in Old Ikoyi, hidden behind high hedges and stone walls, the kind of place designed for privacy. Naomi was already waiting, leaning against the wall beneath a flowering tree. She wore dark glasses and a cream shawl, her posture composed but weary. She got into the front seat without a word. "I booked a room," she said quietly. "Just for a few hours." Kenneth didn't respond initially. Then, after a few seconds, curiosity got a better part of him. "Ma, should I wait in the car for you? Or perhaps in the drinking bar while you take all the time you need? You then just beat me when you are ready to leave." Naomi stared at him. "I think it wouldn't be nice if I spend the time alone under a shelter while you waste away under the sun." Moving ahead of him, "Come on, I didn't pay for the entire night." Reluctantly and in obedience, Kenneth followed her. They entered through a side corridor. The receptionist barely looked up. Naomi led the way. The room was on the second floor, small, clean, and dimly lit, with soft beige curtains and a faint lavender scent in the air. Naomi walked in first and set her bag down. Then she stood for a moment, arms folded, facing the window. "You can sit, Kenneth," she said without turning. He sat stiffly in the armchair by the door. "I know this is strange," she said. "I'm not trying to make anything complicated. I didn't know where else to breathe." Kenneth nodded slowly. "It's okay, Ma." She turned slightly to face him. "Do you always carry other people's burdens so quietly?" "I don't know, Ma. I guess I just try to be supportive. I don't know another way." Naomi came closer, her steps soft against the floor. She stopped in front of him. "You've never judged me," she said. "I never had reason to." Kenneth's breath was becoming shallow. "I've felt more seen in your silence than I've felt in all my years of marriage," Naomi said, advancing even closer to him. Kenneth looked up at her. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, something fragile, raw. Naomi reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. "Naomi," he said, barely a whisper. She leaned down, and their foreheads touched. For a moment, it was still, an ache suspended in the air. Then she kissed him slowly, gently, like a secret finally spoken. Kenneth didn't resist, not at first. Then, halfway through, he tensed and pulled back. "I shouldn't," he said, standing abruptly. Naomi stepped back, giving him space. "I didn't mean to confuse you." "I know," he said, eyes averted. "But this could change so many things." "I just needed today," she replied. "Nothing more." He nodded, but the quiet war inside him showed in his posture, in the way his hands shook slightly. Neither of them said anything else. Naomi sat on the edge of the bed, gaze distant. Kenneth remained by the armchair close to the door, unmoving. Outside, the city moved on. But in that room, time had bent, just long enough for two people to admit, without saying it aloud, that a line had been crossed. Worse, two people who are world apart in power and resources. Kenneth's apartment felt smaller that night. The usual routine, tea, a quick meal, silence, offered no comfort. The hum of the wall fan, once a companion, now grated against the quiet. He sat at the small dining table, rice untouched on his plate. His phone lay face down beside it. His eyes drifted to the corner of the room where his black leather notebook sat. The one he rarely opened. The one that held words he didn't say aloud. Eventually, he picked it up, flipped to a blank page. He didn't write, he only stared. Without warning, his phone buzzed, jarring his attention. He turned it over. It was a message from Naomi. "Thank you for today. It meant more to me, to be seen, to be felt. I don't know what I would have done without it, without your presence." Kenneth read the message twice, then a third time. He typed a reply, "You're welcome, Ma." Then he paused and erased it. Again he typed another response, "I understand, Ma." Again he erased that too. Finally he settled on, "I'll pick you up at 10 tomorrow if you need to go out, Ma." Thank you and good night. He hit send. Then, set the phone down and exhaled, rubbing his hands over his face. A knock echoed from his neighbor's door next door. Laughter followed. A kettle whistled somewhere down the hall. Life was continuing. But inside Kenneth's chest, something had broken open. Quietly, deeply. Something dangerous, even deadly, and he wasn't sure how to close it again. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. He hadn't meant to betray the man who trusted him. But in that moment, Naomi's touch, her words, he hadn't known how to stop. It's been 9 weeks since that soft, gentle kiss from Naomi, and their meetings didn't stop. What began as a moment of emotional escape became a rhythm, a pattern. Once a week became twice, then more. Naomi and Kenneth met in discreet places, quiet hotels, parks outside town, occasionally just long drives to nowhere in particular. The world knew nothing of it, and that secrecy somehow made it sacred. There was no sex, just not yet. But the intimacy deepened. The closeness blurred lines. Hands held longer than necessary. Soft laughter that hung in the air too long. A kiss on the cheek that lingered just a little closer to the lips. It was a slow fall, not a plunge. Naomi laughed more around him. She talked freely in the back seat, smiled without calculation in the quiet, hidden corner of the street. She teased him sometimes, made fun of his quietness. "One day I'll get you to talk too much," she'd say. "Then you won't be able to stop." Around her, Kenneth found it harder and harder to keep his walls up. He felt her presence even when they weren't together, her voice in his mind, her smile tugging at his thoughts when he tried to focus. He never planned to fall in love. But over those 2 months, something real began to root itself inside him. Not desire, not rebellion. Just warmth, affection, deep and terrifying. At night, they exchanged WhatsApp messages. "Did you eat tonight?" Naomi chatted. "Yes, Ma. I tried to eat something I could make. Yam and egg," Kenneth replied. "You like repeating that meal, we need to change your menu soon." Naomi's message came in again. "I'll take suggestions then," Kenneth messaged back. Sometimes she called just to talk or not talk, to listen to his voice, to breathe without explanation, and to feel seen and heard. He learned the rhythm of her breathing when she was calm, the little pauses in her sentences when she was holding something back. One night, one of those nights when Chief Robert is out of the country on a business trip, she had called just past 11 p.m. Her voice was quiet. "Are you asleep?" Kenneth, yet to sleep and half expecting her call, had picked up at the first ring. "No, not yet, Ma. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about nothing. Perhaps about you." Her voice remained calm. "You know this house is big, even intimidating at some point. Feels easier to be around you, just be with you. And here I am, making what might be an impossible wish, that you are here with me this time, in this big house, on this big bed." Kenneth sighed and chuckled a little. "Wouldn't that be reckless of me? I am already in dangerous but irresistible moments with you. That big bed, Ma, might just be the end of me." Naomi hesitated a little, then spoke. "We are all in danger, right? I am just as much as you are. But you know what? Every time I spend with you, every time I watch you from the back seat, or lay in your arms in those quiet street corners, the joy and feeling you give me makes the danger worth it. I'm already in a dangerous situation of losing myself to silence and stillness, conditioned and forgotten. I might as well choose a different danger, and that's why I'm not afraid to wish that you are here with me right now on this bed. I'd want that, Kenneth." For a moment, there was silence between them, a comforting silence that let them imagine what a pleasurable experience it would be. Then Kenneth sighed again and spoke, almost to himself. "I guess so. It would be a nice moment, Ma." "Yes, Kenneth, it would be," Naomi responded. "I might just start looking forward to it, perhaps on another bed equally as big. Good night, and I'll see you tomorrow." The call ended, and Kenneth couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. He told himself it would end, that it had to. But each time he saw her again, his resolve weakened. The guilt lingered, yes, but so did the comfort, so did the joy. In the mansion, Naomi was blooming. She walked lighter, smiled often. She began humming to herself in the kitchen, requesting new music from the house staff, asking Kate to try out new dinner recipes. She sat longer on the balcony, watching the clouds. She wore softer colors, pruned her hair more often. When she wasn't with Kenneth, she was thinking of him. The anticipation of their next meeting filled her with an energy she hadn't felt in years, and no one could miss it. Chief Robert sat in his private study, a glass of aged cognac untouched on the side table. His laptop was open in front of him, but he hadn't scrolled in over 10 minutes. The numbers on the quarterly report blurred into the background. From where he sat, he could hear Naomi humming faintly upstairs. She had been humming a lot lately. At first, he thought nothing of it. Then he started noticing more: her light steps, her subtle glow, the rare laughter she shared with the house staff. She had taken to tinting her golden hair more often, her clothing softer, her presence lighter. She didn't argue about attention anymore, didn't ask to start new businesses. She didn't ask for much of anything, really, but she was content, oddly so. That was what bothered the chief. Robert had spent most of his marriage not really noticing Naomi's shift from hopeful bride to distant partner. But now, this new Naomi, cheerful, light-spirited, felt like someone he hadn't seen in years, and he couldn't trace that joy back to himself. It hadn't come from the last spa package, nor the bracelet he'd given her last month. She'd barely even acknowledged that. She smiled more freely now. The other day, he had walked into the kitchen and found her laughing softly with Kate. A laugh that didn't sound rehearsed, a laugh that felt young. He took a sip of the cognac and leaned back in his chair. At dinner earlier that week, Naomi had smiled at Kate for serving pineapple salad. "I've started liking it again," she said casually. Robert had blinked. He knew that pineapple hadn't been much of Naomi's thing in recent years. Now she liked it again? He remembered something else, a recent morning, when she had come downstairs humming a tune he didn't recognize. She looked refreshed, had even complimented the garden, said something about the flowers looking fuller this season. It was a strange observation because she hadn't noticed the garden in months. The door opened quietly. "Sir?" Kenneth stood by the doorway. "Oh, Kenneth, yes? Your tailor just delivered the suits. Should I hang them or have them pressed first?" Robert looked a bit lost in what to decide immediately. "Have them pressed first," Robert said. "I'll try them on tomorrow." "All right, sir." Kenneth bowed lightly and exited. Robert watched the closed door. Kenneth had always been dependable, polite, and loyal. He looked back at his drink, then down at his untouched laptop. Then his mind went back to Naomi. She was too happy lately, and it had nothing to do with him. It may take long before whatever that is secret comes to light. But one thing is for sure, it will eventually be revealed. Someone somehow will know, will figure it out. And now, Kenneth and Naomi's secret love affair was about to come to light. The night was still. Kenneth sat on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, the screen's glow casting a pale light across his face. He hadn't been able to sleep, not properly, not since the last time he saw her. Naomi had called just before midnight, her voice soft and tired. "I just wanted to say good night," she said. "And thank you again for yesterday." He'd smiled faintly. "Good night, Ma." He hadn't called her Ma during the whole call. Just then, just at the end, like a lifeline to control. The call had ended 15 minutes ago. He was still holding the phone. Then, suddenly, a new message notification appeared. No name, no display picture. Just a number he didn't recognize. The message simply read, "You're too close for a driver. Maybe your boss should be aware." Kenneth stared at the message, unmoving. He read it again, then again. His breathing slowed. The silence around him suddenly felt sharper. He stood up, crossed the room, and peered out through the slats in the window blind. Nothing unusual. But something had changed. Someone is now aware. The danger is no longer a speculation. It is here. His phone buzzed again, just a follow-up symbol. An emoji of an eye watching. Kenneth locked the phone, then placed it face down on the table. The whole space around him suddenly began to heat up. Chief Robert sat in the back seat of the silver SUV, scrolling through his phone as Kenneth drove him through the early morning traffic on the 3rd Mainland Bridge. Kenneth was silent as usual, focused on the road, calm, doing his best to achieve the impossible, shove the thought of previous night away. But Robert's mind was elsewhere. A strange message, the type you don't just look away from, had arrived on his personal line late the night before, from an unknown number. The content of the message was such that how the unknown person got his contact was less of a concern now. It read, "Looks like you're not the only one your wife's romantically interested in. I won't say more. Just being a good person and passing by." He'd stared at the message for minutes, reread it, locked the screen, then unlocked it again. The timing of it, the vagueness, the quiet threat laced beneath the calm. Now, as he sat behind Kenneth, his most trusted employee, his instincts stirred. Robert opened another app and scrolled to the GPS logs for the Lexus Naomi often used. He'd had a tracker installed long ago, not for surveillance, just for security. He tapped through the recent routes. Some visits made sense, the spa, the boutique, a few charity sites. But there were patterns he didn't recognize. Repeating addresses in parts of town he rarely heard Naomi speak of. And one location, subtle, almost hidden in a line of commercial buildings, that repeated 3 times over the last month. Each visit had lasted hours. He tapped the address, a small hotel. Robert's jaw clenched. He looked up through the windshield at Kenneth, still calm and still quiet. Robert leaned back in his seat slowly, his mind tightening around the sudden shift. His first thought was of a rival, an old business adversary perhaps. One of those desperate types who had always envied his success. Could someone be getting back at him through Naomi? Then another possibility struck him, a more familiar wound. Naomi's old flame, Julius. He remembered the name only faintly, someone she'd dated before they married. Back then, he hadn't cared much. He was the one she chose, after all. But now, the thought of her reconnecting with that man felt like a slap across the face. That would be an insult far deeper than betrayal. That would be humiliation. And Naomi, she had been unusually radiant lately, lighter, fuller of life. He hadn't done anything new to make her that way. It didn't add up, perhaps not completely yet. He closed the GPS app, his thumb hovering over the message again. That faceless text. He looked back up at Kenneth. No, Kenneth was family, almost, steady and loyal. Still, the timing, the silence, the secrecy. Perhaps he should know something, seen something. He thought of asking Kenneth outrightly about the visits, but decided against it. That would be too cheap, too easy, and he wouldn't want to put his trusted driver in a tight spot. He'll have to find out by himself. "Drop me at the office. You can take the other car and return home," he said flatly. Kenneth nodded. "Yes, sir." As the SUV merged into a slower lane, Robert stared out at the city below. Something was happening, something potentially devastating. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel in control. He had to do something. He had to find out. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and never miss out on any of our upcoming stories.